Well, the West is in decline, economically, demographically, culturally, and all while our great leaders seem to be doing nothing about it. Europe's share of global economic output has fallen from roughly 1/3 of the world's economy 20 years ago to barely a quarter today. Productivity growth has stalled, debt has soared, workforces are shrinking. Meanwhile, in the East, China's industrial output now exceeds the entire combined manufacturing capacity of Europe and North America. But economics, of course, is half the story. The deeper crisis is demographic and it's cultural, as you well know. European birth rates are now far below replacement level. In Britain, France, Germany, Italy and Spain, native populations are aging and shrinking. The result is not renewal of Europe, it's a fragmentation. In major Western European cities, parallel societies have popped up everywhere. Communities living under completely different social norms, different expectations of the law, and most importantly, different loyalties. Trust in institutions is also on a rapid decline. Social cohesion is fragmenting and fracturing, and political stability has become very brittle, hasn't it? A civilization that once exported its values to the world is now struggling to maintain them even in their home countries. It is not hyperbole to say this. We've seen riots in French suburbs, race riots in Britain, record crime in major European capitals, and courts overwhelmed, police are stretched thin. Political parties rising on promises simply to restore order and borders, something that should be a given, by the way, is now a political battleground. Who would have thought it? And at the same time, global influence is shifting away from the West and, more importantly, shifting away from Europe. Donald Trump has signaled a change to America's slow international decline, embracing the Monroe Doctrine of interventionism. But European leaders are stuck, aren't they, between backing our cousins in America and not upsetting a growing Chinese influence. And rather than decisive action, Western governments appear more focused on managing the decline and sitting on the fence rather than tackling it and reversing it. The West, all of us, our countries, became powerful through innovation. What have we done in Europe? The plastic bottle with the cap stuck to it over the last 20 years, come on. We also grew powerful through shared identity, rule of law and social trust between each other. It's clear that this is no longer the case in most of Britain and across Europe. And the question is no longer whether decline is happening, but whether Western leaders are willing to confront the difficulties of it before the window to recovery closes completely. Rome once fell and it spiraled the continent into a dark age. Are we now on the precipice of another one?
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
And I'm very grateful to say we're joined by the man whose name is on this show. GB News presenter Matt Goodwin is joining us down the line. Matt, thank you so much for appearing on your show tonight. It's great to see you, mate. Tell us, you've been talking about the decline of the West. I think you're in Paris, France. Correct me if I'm wrong. Tell us what you've been telling people over there.
Well, thank you, Alex. That's right. I've been giving a lecture, a keynote lecture on the future of Western civilization. And one of my arguments is exactly as you laid out, that the primary problem facing the West today is actually not economic, but cultural. We are not reproducing ourselves. We're not having enough children. We don't have governments that are supporting families. We don't have governments that even treat our national borders as things that should be protected and upheld. As Arthur Toynbee, the great historian, once said, civilizations do not die through murder, they die through suicide. And that's exactly what I think is happening through large parts of Europe. We are in the hands of a ruling class, a political class that is no longer invested seriously in sustaining and upholding our nations. And our ancestors never had to really worry about this. But this is something that I think, Alex, we can no longer ignore.
I totally agree with you, Matt. It's a serious issue that we do need to confront here in the West. It seems like Donald Trump might be gripping this a lot better than we are in Europe. Matt, while we've got you, there's, of course, the audience has been gagging to ask your thoughts on defections. You're very close with Reform UK. What's your perspective on this? We've seen a series of defections over the last couple of weeks. What do you think, Matt?
Well, let's be absolutely clear. The reason that Nigel Farage and Reform exist is because millions of people in this country are fed up with the uniparty, the Labour and Tory consensus that has presided over 30 years of failure, managed decline, chaos, and cultural fragmentation. That political revolt, the true potential of that revolt, will only be fulfilled if Reform and the people who defect to Reform remain committed to the vision that is guiding that movement, ending mass uncontrolled immigration, leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, doing whatever is necessary to control Britain's borders, ending woke ideology, ending soft on crime policies, defending free speech, banning Muslim Brotherhood. If they remain committed to that vision, Alex, then Nigel Farage will be the next Prime Minister of this country, and we will get that political realignment. If, on the other hand, Reform is flooded with careerists and people who do not share that vision, then this political revolt, this people's revolt, will collapse, and it will be the British people who will lose as a consequence. So I think where Reform are today, I think overall is in a good place. You know, they are changing the system. They're smashing through. They're breaking the system. I think Nigel Farage is doing what he needs to do to get closer to 40%. But they need to be clear. If you're joining this movement, you are signing up to a set of principles that differentiate this movement from the uniparty that has almost destroyed our country.
I completely agree on your sentiments there, Matt. Thank you so much for joining us. You're in Switzerland. I beg your pardon. You weren't in France. You're in Switzerland. And thank you so much for joining us down the line, Matt. You'll be back next week. I'm sure your audience are missing you. They are writing and saying they miss you today. So thanks for coming and doing a hit with us there. Matt Goodwin, GB News presenter. We'll see you shortly. I am now joined by associate comment editor for The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and political commentator Kai Wilshaw to dig into this. Poppy, I'll start with you. We talk about the decline of the West often, and it's very difficult while you're going through decline to sometimes see it. And I want to put this maybe in a bit more of a newsworthy context here, because we're talking about political parties at the moment who are going through major shifts. A lot of them have come off the back of what they would call 14, 30 years of decline. Right?
I can think of one that you might be referring to.
Take it away.
Begin with C, the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the most important thing, I think, and this is like the 12 steps to recovery from alcoholism. The first thing is admitting you have a problem, right? And I think the Conservative Party has been so far completely incapable of doing that. I can't even say Britain is broken, as we saw from the defection of Robert Jenrick yesterday. He said his former frontbench colleagues wouldn't even admit things were broken because those were the people who broke it. I think maybe we're giving too much credit to the Conservatives, though. Unfortunately, decline in Britain in particular goes back quite a long time. Failures of politicians really go almost all the way back to the middle of the 20th century, where we lose our relative status in the world and we start to kind of accept a place as a middling power. Now, the problem is that we thought we could maintain a very high standard of living while kind of moving from global superpower to middling power. And we're now starting to discover that that is no longer the case. You know, we had a brief blip with Margaret Thatcher where GDP is actually really going up, living standards are really going up in a measurable way, but the journey has really just been down, down, down. And until we get politicians that can actually speak of national renewal, and I don't just mean going back to the glory days, but like really embracing status of being a powerful, strong country again, a rich country again, then I'm afraid that our standards of living are going to remain quite poor, because you can't accept mediocrity and then expect to live a really good life. You know, you have to embrace both.
Where do you think the decline started, Poppy? Which government in your brain sort of manufactures itself as the starting point of Britain's decline?
I mean, look, I'm very right-wing, so I think it's Attlee. You know, I'm going all the way
You're
back
going
to
back far there.
well, but it's true. You know, we got loads of money from the Americans. We should have spent it on, like, rebuilding industry. Instead, we took the money and pocketed it for benefits. So there you go.
Well, in that case, we'll be able to point the finger squarely at Labour, Kai, because Keir Starmer seems unwilling to think that Britain is broken. That's another, you could call it the uniparty stance on it, couldn't you? You could say both Labour and the Tories are unwilling to admit Britain is broken because both of them have been in charge recently. Therefore, they can't admit it because it would be an admission of failure on both of their halves. Do you think Britain's broken, and do you think the Labour Party is doing enough to tackle broken Britain?
I do think Britain is broken. I think...
You've just said two more words in the shadow cabinet, Tory cabinet.
Well, that's the thing. The Labour Party and the Conservative Party, they see pockets and glimmers of brilliance. Britain is a brilliant country to live in still. And there are pockets of brilliance. There is amazing tech talent. We're still the third largest tech economy in the world. But as Poppy said, the structural issues are right there for the seeing: an aging economy, rising China, and the States doing its own thing over there, and Europe certainly in a tepid bath of decline, in Keir Starmer's words. So it's difficult to grasp, and that's why they don't want to say Britain's broken, because what do you do with that? And certainly as a governing party right now, having not grasped with the seriousness of the issue, it's too much to plan for, and that's why Reform, and Richard Tice has said, he said in a recent Bloomberg speech in November, look, we've got 3 years and we can ask the really big questions. And some of them, he said, will be mad. Like rethinking the mandate of the Bank of England is one thing he said, right? Labour hasn't done that thinking, that radical thinking that's needed if you accept, and Keir Starmer I don't think does, I think some of the party do, that Britain is broken and something big needs to change.
Poppy, is it the case that the challenge is so big to fix Britain that any party is actually incapable of doing it? Because the change needed... We saw what happened when Liz Truss wanted to change taxation in Britain. Not that I think she did it correctly. Communication was all over the place, but she had the right idea, in my opinion, on taxation. It was just poorly executed.
I mean, I agree with you. It's a failure of ambition. Unfortunately, the truth is that most politicians don't really want to be proper politicians. They want to be caseworkers. I mean, look at the quality of the debate that we're having at the moment from the Conservatives and the Labour Party. They're currently discussing a ban on social media for under 16s. Now, you might agree with that. You might think it's a sensible policy. But why is that leading the news agenda for these people?
Well, how can they... Do you know what really winds me up, Poppy, right?
Yeah.
Is that the Grok stuff, which I think we all agree something needed to change, but they got in there straight away and started legislating. Right? Why can't we do this with other things?
Exactly.
Why is it that they are incapable of taking on really big issues?
Like, why... I just think we need to aim bigger than breakfast clubs and teaching people how to brush their teeth and making sure you're not looking at naughty words on social media. Like, that is not how you run a serious country. You think about energy security, you think about financialisation, you think about military reorganisation. You are not talking about these issues. If you want to do those things, then you should get a different job. And that goes for every single politician, regardless of party stripe.
Totally
if you want to
agree.
rule Britain, you need to be serious.
And as well as the prioritisation issue, which is what you're talking about, i.e. treat matters with, choose your right issues, choose the hills to die on, there's also an urgency issue. They're not meeting those challenges with urgency, and so there's sort of all this frippery around sort of fringe issues, as you say, and at the same time you've got a civil service and an enabling ecosystem, all the sort of arms of the state, but because they're not focused on those priorities, there's no urgency there. You could instill some urgency in service of sort of achieving those priorities. Keir Starmer had some priorities, whether the right ones, no, but then the urgency also didn't follow. Right?
Well, it seems to me that we might be in terminal decline, and that's very sad because I love this country and I think we have so much potential, but we have really, really, really got to have some radical thinking in government and someone who's going to be willing to really upset people. And I'm hoping we'll get there by the next election. Who knows? Anyway, look,